In video 3.A, part A, we talked about the yardstick and how you can go in between layers and how that might be necessary if you have depth in your photo. But in addition to that, sometimes there's a lot of depth in the photo that's hard to just measure with a yardstick. Maybe you have really deep cutbacks. Maybe you're going far back on the left and the right, all the way to the fence line on this house, for example. Maybe you're wanting to do the upper ridge. So, how do we address more difficult types of measurements? Well, when you have a measurement that's not just flat and you really want to add that depth in, you can add in an aerial view of the same home. So we have an aerial view on Design 2. This is just something we pulled up from Google Earth. While we were in Google Earth, we measured in between our two peaks. As a reminder, from part A of the yardstick, you want your known measurement to be something that's visible from both the front of the house and from the top of the house. So we picked the two peaks because we can see the two peaks from both sides. We can't see the left and the right of the house really well because of the tree here, but we can see between those two. So we measured between these two using Google Earth, and that's how we figured out that 28 feet was the length that we needed for this particular home. So while you're there, you can take a screenshot and you can upload this to Holiday Home Concepts. This is a great way of measuring all of your cutbacks or more difficult areas. So you can see we used our trace button to measure out and trace the garden beds. Do you see how curvy these garden beds are? If you look at the garden beds from the front, they look much flatter. You really don't realize, you see some curve, but you don't realize the full extent of that curve until you look from the top. So we would have missed a lot of that footage had we tried to measure that from the front because we're not seeing the depth. Same thing with your walkway. Walkways and driveways are going to look very short from the front, so they should be measured from the top. You'll notice that we did one in yellow and we did the other in orange. The reason why we did this is so that we could see in our quick estimate those items separate from each other. Again, the client doesn't have to see this version. This is for you. But now we know that the walkway is approximately this length and that the garden bed is approximately this length. This is also useful for us to know because we can look at the amount of bulbs associated with each line and we'll know how many stakes we need versus how many clips we need. Clips are used on the roof line. Stakes are used in the ground. If you are measuring anything flat on the roof, like cutbacks, right? Those can be drawn as normal. We remember when we talked about measuring to that fence line, you can see that we did so on the left and right. But what if we wanted to add the upper ridge lines? Anywhere where it's flat, which is kind of where the turquoise is, those are flat areas and can be drawn just as is and measured appropriately just using the quick estimate. However, for areas like over here, and let me just move this so you guys can see it a little bit better, where you have a full line and then it's coming down at an angle. So wherever there's kind of a pitch, so this line here or this line here, nowhere where it's flat, but where it comes down at an angle, you can draw that line and another half a line to go with it. So that's what we did. We drew the full line and a half line more. That helps to account in for the depth of those particular pitches. After that, we just simply duplicated them since these two sides are mirrors of each other. We clicked our shift button and we clicked both items that we needed and then we just hit duplicate. And that's how we got the 4 lines. So one represented one side, one represented the first side. So if I was to say want a measurement for these ridge lines, I would draw the first line and then a half one more. That's going to take into account the depth going into the photo as well. But if I was just drawing the back line, I wouldn't need to do any of that, right? Because that's flat. There's no angle, there's no pitch to it. I can just draw it as is. So by combining the more complicated measurements, with the less complicated measurements. Peaks always measured from the front, because peaks do not measure well from the top. There's depth going in. So peaks from the front, and then ridge lines and things like that, and garden beds from the top. You can combine the front, you can combine all of these, and that's going to give you the overall count that you need for this photo. So we can look at the quick estimate for this one, and we can look at the quick estimate for this one, add them together, and it is going to give us number design 4 here. And that might be, you know, our Griswold option with all the bells and whistles that go with it. So even if something's a little bit more complicated, you can measure from both the top and the front and combine those together to give you a whole number that's a little bit more complete than had you just measured from front or just measured from top.